Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Mark Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the 8th episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. My name is Justin Wolf. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined here by Mark Regala, my co-host. And so tonight it's just going to be me and Mark talking about really the connection between our mind and our body. And before we dive into that, Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing awesome. How about yourself, Justin?
Doing all right, hanging in there. It's been really eventful week, just a lot going on. So happy to really have this time to kind of set aside and just be here to talk with you about this topic that I know I'm personally looking forward to tonight, because I know this is right in your wheelhouse of something that you are very passionate about, talking about that, just the connection between our physical well-being, our body, and how our mind plays a role in our journey here. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of like dive into when we're talking about this connection, because I feel like sometimes that gets lost, where it's like, I just need to work on my mind, and people put a lot of energy and time and focus into trying to, quote unquote, fix their thinking, or try to create and elicit a lot of those really feel good feelings, while kind of bypassing a huge part of that, which is your physical body. And so what I wanted to get is kind of like, what's your thoughts on that connection between the mind and the body in recovery?
Well, I've spoken about this before, and, when I was in the depths of my addiction, I was on a quest for knowledge, and I would watch a lot of YouTube videos, do a lot of research online while in active addiction, because I really wanted to get out of the hell that I was in. I've said this before. I really believe that nobody wants to get out of the hell that they're in more than the addict themselves. They just don't know how to get out of that hell. And sometimes they be shown the way. And the one thing that I did learn from watching those videos and doing some reading up on some of the stuff is the feel-good chemicals in the brain. Specifically the serotonin levels, the dopamine levels, the oxytocin levels, and the endorphin levels. And, what are the different activities that you can do to get those levels up naturally? Those are all mood-altering chemicals in our brain. And the one thing that was consistent across the board that I saw to get each one of those up was exercise.
Yeah.
So I knew exercise was going to be a pretty critical component of my recovery. The other thing is I learned through the process of educating myself that, what an endorphin is.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that the word endorphin is made up of two words. The ENDO is endogenous, which means from within. The RPHIN is morphine. So you put them together, the word endorphin means morphine from within. Our body naturally makes morphine. Our body naturally makes opiates. In order to get that up, obviously, the number one way to get your endorphins up is exercise. Well, I'm an opiate addict in recovery. That's been pretty well documented on these podcasts. I thought, I didn't have any medical recommendations, but I thought, if I can naturally get my morphine levels up, get my natural opiate levels up, it had to help me with the acute withdrawal syndrome that I was facing, during that first year of recovery. And it did. It was not easy as far as getting up and moving and exercising. I mean, exercising early on, a win would be a walk around the block, eventually get up to 2,500 steps per day, work your way up to 10,000 steps per day. It didn't start with lifting weights, didn't start with doing CrossFit, didn't start with any of that stuff. It was literally just trying to get the body moving, get the endorphins up, get the natural morphine levels up, to just feel good as you're dealing with your body just beat up from a major opiate addiction.
Right. I mean, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges, especially early on, is that, hey, I just want to feel good. I'm trying to feel good. And right now, I just feel miserable, because I know kind of being caught up in the depths and just really getting stuck in our own head. And I know it can really be hard to be comfortable physically in ourselves when emotionally we are just tearing ourselves apart and we are caught in this wild and turbulent storm that is just tormenting us, filled by those beliefs, those attitudes, those thoughts, those judgments that we're carrying. Because I know, Mark, you and I have talked before where it's like, hey, nobody is harder on themselves than each individual. Like we
Correct.
say things to ourselves. I know you've said it before, right? We say things to ourselves we never say to other people. And I think that's the part where looking at if I'm not okay and I'm reminding myself and I'm telling myself that this is not the life that I want to be living and I'm not showing up the way that I want to show and I'm very discontent, well then physically I'm going to have a hard time being comfortable living in this body. And I think that's plays such a key role when you're talking about exercise there. It's about that attitude and just knowing that how do I commit to doing these things that I know and believe are in my own best interest that are attending and actually I'm actually investing in myself this way.
Yeah. And then, the other thing is too, is again, on that quest for an education, if you will, or for knowledge, if you will,
Mhm.
I mean, not only would I do the research about the mood altering chemicals in the brain, but I would watch, motivational videos of recovery. Whether it was, a past AA meeting or, some type of, you know, motivational YouTube video.
Yeah.
I would go to meetings, speaker meetings, and hear like their journey to recovery. And then as I got more into the recovery world, I started speaking at, these hospitals to patients that are in the psychiatric care going through, either a mental health diagnosis or adult diagnosis on the alcohol and addiction side. And I started speaking with a number of speakers. And the one thing that was always consistent, in fact, honestly, I don't even know if I can say I've even spoken with the speaker that has not mentioned exercise as part of their recovery. And obviously, exercise has been a critical component of my recovery. So you start connecting the dots. I always talk about don't focus on the differences, focus on the similarities.
Mhm.
Focus on the similarities of the disease of addiction or alcoholism and the subsequent mental health disorder associated with that, but also focus on the similarities of the activities during recovery. And exercise was always mentioned. Diet is, for the most part, always mentioned as well. So it made sense for me. The two areas that I wanted to focus on were exercise and diet. Not because I'm a genius, but it's just connecting the dots. Basically, is what it comes down to.
That's just something a little extra for the audience is your genius. So
far from it. Far from it. Trust me.
no, but that's something where you talk about exercise, and that's such a key thing. And I know, like having the energy or the commitment or that willingness component to kind of go and do something and push yourself to do something that's different, hard, and challenging takes a lot of just follow through and just discipline. Because anything that's uncomfortable, I know naturally from my mind, it's like, I don't really want to lean into this uncomfortable feeling or this experience. Where's that like side route that's a little bit easier to kind of navigate where it's not as hard, but I can say I did it. Right. And I think that's a huge challenge. So for you, like hearing all these things about people sharing their stories about recovery, working out, a complete and total lifestyle change, you talked about like those small steps. Like, what did you notice starting to change about just your overall thought process when you're doing this?
First of all, I want to give a little credit to a few individuals because when I started being transparent and started explaining to some of my friends the challenges I was going through, because I kept it a secret a long time, I was very fortunate that I had friends that literally would show up to my house every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and be laying on the horn in front of my house until I got my butt out of bed and went downstairs in the car and they would drag me to the gym. And they held me accountable. And I needed that accountability because I felt so crappy in the morning, again, going through that acute withdrawal syndrome. They really, really stepped up for me. And I want to respect their privacy, but at the same time, they know who they are. I want to give them thanks because I don't know where I'd be without them holding me accountable early on. But the other thing is too is that as an addict or an alcoholic or somebody with a mental health diagnosis in early recovery, you're still dealing with shame, you're still dealing with guilt, and honestly, you still have a problem looking at the person in the mirror. And the one thing that I learned early on is, I started going regularly because these individuals were holding me accountable, and I started seeing, a difference in my body. I actually started getting in shape. You started seeing the physical transformation, and all of a sudden you start feeling good about yourself again. And you get a positive mindset about who you are. For the first time, you're actually starting to like the person in the mirror. Doesn't mean you love them yet.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you still got a lot of internal damage that you're still trying to process, but it's the start. And I think that's important. I think that's why a lot of people who are in recovery put such an emphasis on the exercise. It's twofold. It's one, to help with the brain chemistry, but two, they start liking the person in the mirror again. They feel good about themselves. It's all about a mindset, a positive mindset, if you will. And seeing that progress gives you that positive mindset. When you kind of were stuck in a rut for such a long period of time dealing with your various addictions.
Right. You talk about just like the overall stress that we all experience and that we all go through in the day to day, especially having to like repair damage that's been done to in our relationships, personal lives, to our body. And here's something that actually can help repair that. And it's something that we have the ability to control and show up for. And like you said, you built a sense of community there with your friends who were kind of showing up to kind of say, hey, man, it's 5 a.m. Let's get rolling. And talk about a complete lifestyle change there to attend to your body.
It was, and honestly, it flip-flopped because now I'm the one that holds them accountable because I got so into it and liked the changes that were being made to my body and started seeing, I guess, maybe some respect from people that doubted me, when I was in early recovery, that it just motivated me even more. And I think that in a roundabout way, people see it I overcame some of the obstacles in my life. They look at it as a source of inspiration, if you will. So, we do have literally a group text, and the cell phone starts going off pretty early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and it's people checking in at the gym, which is so completely different than the lifestyle that I lived prior, where it was a group text of, where to get various drugs or pills or whatever it might be. It's the complete morphing of my daily activities and the network around me as a result of doing what's right in recovery.
Right, because I know that, and I see this, when I'm working at the treatment center and just my own personal life experience where that gym becomes a focal point where people are now saying, hey, you know what? I'm looking and I see this damage that was done. And I just don't want to live like this anymore. And then you go and you start having something now you can focus your mind on. Because I know for me, my mind was always running. It's always going.
Yeah.
And sometimes early on, and just on bad days, right? It goes to these places that we don't want it to go to, and yet we still find ourselves there. And so what do we have control over in those moments is connecting with something that can attend to both our physical body and our mental well-being. And that's where I feel like the gym, you're talking, really doing a great job highlighting just how powerful this is, especially early on, especially when you got to deal with just life on life's terms here and deal with those daily stressors. And so how did that help with your stress, especially early on? You're talking about those early, post-acute withdrawal syndrome symptoms.
Well, here's what's interesting about the gym. So the guys that started dragging me to the gym, they got me doing CrossFit early on. So I joined the CrossFit gym. Now, I don't do CrossFit anymore because I started
you were one of those, huh?
Well, I started getting some injuries, and being an opiate addict, I was so fearful of screwing up my shoulder or screwing up a knee, having to go under the knife, and then have to worry about, prescription pain pills. So I work out on my own now. But early on, it was CrossFit. But it was a purpose. I mean, everything worked out for a reason because they were bringing me to CrossFit gym. Ironically, there's a lot of former military individuals that are in the CrossFit gym because of their exercise regimen. And I started talking to these individuals because I started feeling comfortable in my own skin, talking about my mental health and my addiction issues. And because they were former military, they all had their stuff going on too. PTSD, depression, some had their battle of alcohol and drugs as well. So ironically, not only did it help on the physical fitness side, but it also helped me from a mindset perspective because now I'm creating a network of individuals that are either battling still or in recovery. And that helped out a lot as well. And then now, because I got to know some of these military guys, and I actually helped a couple of these military guys get sober. As we alluded to on the past podcast with Eric, with that one gentleman that he helped out, get that gentleman to the VA and so forth. I buy a lot of T-shirts, from companies that support the military for mental health awareness, suicide awareness for the soldiers, and I wear these T-shirts to the gym. And a lot of them are motivational quotes, a lot of them are recovery focused. And when I'm at the gym working out, I'll get people come up to me and say, "Are you a military guy?" "No, I'm not a military guy." "Well, you're wearing a military T-shirt." "Well, yeah, but I'm on the mental health side and the recovery side." "Oh, you are?" "I'm in recovery too," or "I'm trying to get sober," or whatever it might be. So even in the gym that I'm working at now, which I do a lot of, I pretty much all individual workout now. I'm creating um, a network of individuals there as well, just from wearing these T-shirts. And what I've come to learn is that everybody has a story. Everybody has an issue going on, either with themselves, with their family, or friend, or whatever it might be. And it just takes you to be open and transparent for them to open up themselves to you. And that's helped a lot too.
Definitely. I mean, just like that willingness to connect with other people. And I think that's the lovely thing we're talking about, like whatever it's going to be for anybody, right? Like for you and I, like, hey, the gym's been like a safe haven. It's been like, hey, it's my lighthouse on a rainy day. Like, and I'm caught up in this storm. That's exactly where I'm going because I know that is a great place to kind of unload and unburden myself with like that stress and that pressure of the day. And I think that has been one of the nice caveats to that is you build a sense of community there, especially at a time when you really need it, where it's like, hey, I'm on my island. I'm still new to this. I don't know who I'm going to relate to, talk to, connect with now that I'm not running around with the same people that I was running around with before because that doesn't work for me. And I cannot afford to go back to that. So the gym becomes a great place because when you're looking at who do I want to surround myself with that has the same goals, values, and ideals that I carry, and where can I find those individuals? Like a lot of times, those relationships are built in a place like the gym, and I think that is one of the most key components, especially early on, where we're talking about emotional well-being and physical well-being, is looking at our relationship health. Do we have relationships with people where we feel like we are actually valued, appreciated, seen, and heard versus feeling like, hey, like they wouldn't even notice if I disappeared tomorrow. And so like that connection is so key in just our sense of belonging with other people. Because one of the key things that when we're talking like stress and like the pressure that can like be relieved by committing and following through on this is that we need other people in our life regardless, because we need them to help co-regulate our own emotional experiences that we have. We can't deal with this by ourselves or else we wouldn't be here. Like, so I think that's one of those key things we were talking about, like that sense of community that was built and that you kind of found there. That's critical to your recovery health.
And there's a lot of sharing of knowledge, not only from different like exercise moves, but, dietary as well. And, that just kind of happened by accident as well, which is kind of weird. But, again, I knew that dietary changes need to be made from reading up on those feel good chemicals in the brain. I knew that everything I was putting in my body basically reeked of depression. I mean, the American way, I mean, our diet as a country reeks of depression, from the diet pop that we drink to the alcohol that we consume to the fast food, high saturated fat diet, candy, sugars, desserts, whatever it might be. I mean, everything that we put in our body, it literally is screwing with our brain chemistry in a negative way. And I wanted to see the physical transformation continue. I started reading up on, what's the right, protein / carb ratios that you're supposed to take in every day, what types of protein to take every day. And lo and behold, and this is where the aha moment came in, I realized the body truly is a machine. And, what you put in your body to feed your mind also feeds the body physically,
Right.
from a protein perspective, a lean protein, whether it's, chicken or fish, to vegetables, to a lower carb, type diet. Um, I mean, all that stuff has positive impacts on like the serotonin levels in your brain and so forth, but it also is going to help you, physically transform. I shared the story with you offline, but a lot of it's just sharing information amongst the fraternity of people in the recovery community. I
Mhm.
got a gentleman that, he's actually a lead singer in a cover band, and he's got like a friggin' 8 pack, and I helped him get off fentanyl. He had a pretty heavy addiction to fentanyl, and he's like, "What can I do in return?" I'm like, "You know what? You don't do anything in return except share with me how the hell you get abs like that." And he shared his diet with me, and for the longest time, I was following that diet, and I have nowhere near close to the abs he has. But for the first time in 50 years, or almost 50 years of my life, I'm actually starting to see my abs. I mean, that makes me feel good
Yeah.
coming from where I was, and again, you start looking at that person in the mirror and you're like, man, I'm starting to like the person that I see. And then you're doing work in the community and you're helping others and you're speaking at the hospitals. Now you're really starting to feel good, not only with the physical transformation,
Yeah.
that you're seeing in the mirror, but also the internal or mental transformation that you're seeing in the mirror too. And that's so important because we all know that you have to love yourself, to,
Right.
to be loved, to love others, and, to be really a functional member of society, living life the right way. It starts with yourself loving yourself.
100%. I feel like it's like, hey, like I'm going to treat myself like I actually care about the outcome of the story. And it's really kind of making that transition because I feel like a lot of times what ends up happening, we're in a bad spot and we're really discontent in our own skin, our own body, is that we start treating ourselves like we're an option in our own lives where we don't matter as much as insert anybody else's name here or even the pet. Um,
Yeah.
that's what ends up happening, right? And I think that's where really saying that I'm going to actually invest and be interested in actually the food, the nutrient content, and these diets, and how this is going to actually set me up to be more successful in my journey versus this just being another task I have to do. Because I know caught up in it, you talk about like the American diet. I mean, what do you want when you feel like crap?
Yeah.
You're looking for something that's like really high fat, really salty, not something that you're going to end up on the like cover of Muscle and Fitness as a result of this new diet.
Right.
So just going from not really focusing or putting much thought or energy into the diet to now this hyper focus in a sense, attention to detail. Like, how is that factored into your day to day?
You know what? I mean, it sounds like daunting and how I'm going to make all these changes. And maybe early on, maybe you're cognizant of it. It's like the old saying, it takes 22 days for something to become a habit, 100 days for it to become a lifestyle. It's so secondhand nature now. It's like
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiables. I know what I'm going to eat on a daily basis. I know my alarm's going to go off at 4:30 in the morning on a daily basis. I know it's going to start at the gym on a daily basis, and it's just how I get started. And there's days that I work out in the morning. There's days I might work out a couple of times because I might have a stressful day at work or something happened personally that I felt a little triggered, a little edgy, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go hit the gym a second time today, and it just makes a big, big, big difference. I use the example of, I'm going to be 50 this year, but I have aches and pains. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
those first couple reps or first couple sets, excuse me, you're feeling the
Yeah.
aches and pains, but then once you get into it, those aches and pains are gone. Why are those aches and pains gone? Well, I'd like to think it's the endorphins. Endorphins is a
Mm-hmm.
natural, morphine's it's a painkiller. I mean, endorphins is a natural painkiller. So all of a sudden those endorphins kick in, the soreness that you might be feeling are gone, and all of a sudden you can get through a workout. Well, the one
Mm-hmm.
thing I learned through my opiate addiction is painkillers are great for the physical pain, but they work out even better for the emotional pain. So again, taking
Right.
that mindset, transferring it to how our body works. Well, if I can get my endorphins up, yeah, it might help me with my physical pain or the soreness I'm feeling with my bad shoulder or my bad elbow or whatever it might be because of my age. But it's also going to help with a lot even better on the stuff I'm dealing with on the inside. Whether it's the hurt of not seeing my kids for the sixth consecutive Christmas,
Yeah.
or not seeing certain individuals around the house, whatever it might be. I mean, life hits you sometimes, in a day when you didn't even expect it. All of a sudden you start feeling down.
Right.
What do? Go hit the gym, put the earbuds in, listen to some good music, and basically just get in my zone. I often say that my day starts with a therapy session, and I say that tongue in cheek because that therapy session is the gym, but I really do view it as therapy. It gets my head straight, gets my mind straight for the task at hand, which is the business day or the day ahead. And I've said, the first two things I think about every day: one, get through the day sober; two, have a good mental health day. Well, going to the gym first thing in the morning, that's going to help me with both. And putting the right foods in my body, that's going to help me with both. So that's a great base.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what else do I have to do the rest of the day? Is it attend a meeting? Is it help facilitate a support group meeting? Is it doing some sponsor work? Is it, speaking at the hospital? Is it positive self-talk, positive affirmations, reframing of the mind, whatever it might be? That's all going to happen, but the base is set with the dietary and the exercise.
Yeah, no, and I think you get that when you're so attuned to yourself, like the way you're talking about just being aware of where am I at today? What's running through my mind and where's my body at? And what is it that Mark needs to have a really good and productive day? And I think that's key. I mean, a lot of times it'd just be like, you know what? Like, this might be a problem. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to push that aside. This seems like inconvenient to me. And I know, like, that's just the way my mind, like, do I really have to deal with this now? But I know what ends up happening in my world is that when I start pushing these things aside and not really acknowledging them, that, hey, this just might take like 5 minutes to attend to, but you're acting like you don't have time for this. Well, guess what? It just became a much bigger issue now because it's just going to pile up. And I think that's when we stop acting and treating ourselves like we don't have time for our own needs and we start now actually attending to those things. It makes life a lot easier to navigate when it is already just so unpredictable as it is. And so if I got control over these things I got control over, and now I have to adjust to what life brings to me, I know at least I've set that foundation and that base so that mentally I'm not just being like reactionary. I can be proactive
Correct.
in how I'm preparing when this does show up. Because the idea that I'm never going to have a bad day or things just aren't going to go well, and now I got this stress just like dropped in my lap. Well, I better have myself in a position to handle this effectively. Because if not, I'm just going to make this situation a hell of a lot worse now. And then I got a much bigger mountain that I'm going to have to climb to get over this.
Yeah. If you don't, you're pretty susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
And, my story, there's a lot of peaks and valleys. It wasn't like I got it one and done at drug and alcohol treatment. I mean, there were multiple visits to drug and alcohol treatment. There was multiple visits to psychiatric care. I mean, there was multiple hiccups along the way, excuse me, to get to the point where I realized you have to do something every single day. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, we're talking about a disease that's in the same category as diabetes. I mean, a diabetic has to do something every single day. They got to check their blood sugar. They might have to take oral meds. They might have to take injections. Excuse me. They got to watch their diet. They got to watch their sugar intake. Well, if we're in the same category of a disease as diabetes, why do we think that we could just do things for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or a couple months and then just go back to living our life how it was before, which led to the chaos that we're trying to come out of? Um, that's just a recipe for disaster. But that's what I did multiple times. I've often said recovery, I made it so much harder than it needed to be. But that being said, I had learning experiences with every hiccup along the way that allowed me to get to where I was able to attain, the sobriety level that I'm at right now and the recovery level that I'm at right now. So, I don't think necessarily that relapse is has to be part of recovery, but a lot of times it is a part of recovery. And I always tell people it's not a bad thing as long as you learn from it. And most of the time, it's not being proactive, like you said, not keeping the pedal to the metal, not doing the things you need to do every day. And again, the best way I can relate to that is we're in the same disease as somebody who has diabetes or MS or whatever else. They got to do things every day. What makes us so special? Why does this make this so bad? They got to do stuff every day. Why do we feel bad that we got to do something every day? It's just something we got to deal with. What we have to do is different than what they have to do, but still activities that we have to do to keep our disease in check. And if you don't, and you're not proactive, you're going to be pretty susceptible when the stresses of life happen. And that's when you're prone to relapse and things like that. And I've witnessed that firsthand, not only with myself multiple times, but with people that I've worked with multiple times.
Right. I think it's acknowledging and looking at like, hey, when things don't go according to plan and slips happen, what can I take a step back and really learn from this moment? What did I think was working that actually really wasn't working in my best interest? Or I thought it was okay to kind of go to this spot, hang out with these people, because I think that's part of being in that position where you've done work on yourself to be able to self-evaluate and assess. I'm trying to get to this spot in my life, in my world now. If I continue to be in these situations with these individuals in my world, and I might really like them, and are they really what I need at this time if I'm going to move forward the way that I want to move forward? And I think that's a big component that kind of gets tied into all this. We're talking about like the mind-body connection is really separating like those wants versus what is it that I need. Because talk about diet and exercise, it might be like, hey, I want 18-inch biceps, but I don't really want to go to the gym more than like once a month. Like, is that possible? To give me a workout plan. Let's make it happen. No, it comes from like that discipline, that commitment, and that follow through at the end of the day that you see like, hey, I put in this hard work and now I'm starting to see these results. And if I'm going to set myself up by not putting as much energy into attending to my mind and my body the way that I attended to my active addiction, then I'm really setting myself up here to not be successful in this journey.
Yeah, and there was this one gentleman that spoke the last time I was hospitalized in psychiatric care, and I talk about him often because he was an opiate addict in recovery, a heroin addict in recovery, and his story was very inspirational to me. Yeah. But he told me when I approached him after he spoke at the hospital, he said something very poignant to me. He goes, yeah, you're going to finish your stay here. He goes, you're probably going to go to drug and alcohol treatment. Maybe you go to an outpatient program after inpatient drug and alcohol treatment. He goes, I don't know how long you're going to be under medical care for. Or 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, who knows? He goes, but hear me and hear me loud and clear. The real work starts when you're discharged from medical care and nobody's watching and nobody's holding you accountable. And it's for you to set the alarm and do the things every single day that you need to do. Yeah. That's when the real work starts. And for whatever reason, that spoke to me, that resonated to me. I actually share that message when I speak at the hospitals now because that was so true and so poignant when he said that. Yeah. And I know we were kind of kidding around before we started recording the podcast, but I referred to it as Mike Tyson's podcast. I know you said Jocko says the same thing on his podcast, but I like listening to Mike Tyson because I sit there and laugh. I mean, he talks about serious subject matter, but at the same time, it's so funny the way he interjects some stuff. But he says, so he's a very smart man. And he says, kind of something similar to what this gentleman said. Discipline is, waking up in the morning, not wanting to do something, but do it like you love it every single day. Yeah. Because it's not like I just jump out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. Like, I'm ready to go to the gym. No, I mean, there's days, especially when it's negative 20-degree wind chill, that you don't want to get out of bed and face the elements and drive to the gym, but you have to do it. It's a non-negotiable. That's the mindset that you have to have. But it's not non-negotiable because I want to get big and I want to look better physically. It's non-negotiable because I want to stay sober, be in recovery, and keep my mental health in check. That's why it's a non-negotiable. All the other benefits, that's secondary or third on the list. Yeah. It's really the sobriety and the mental health and the recovery. That's the primary, because I don't ever want to go back to where I was before. I just want to keep pushing forward, moving forward, and getting better every single day.
Yeah, no, the way you just put that out, like, made me think in my head, it's like, hey, there was like just the stress that we have when all of a sudden we don't continue to do those things that really helped us get there. Like, hey, like I'm going to miss a day at the gym today. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The stress that sets in, and learning that, hey, just because I miss a day doesn't mean that everything falls apart. And I think that's where I had to learn that early on, is that, hey, your body needs time to recover. Because if you're just going full throttle day in, 7 days a week, multiple hours a day, your behavior's taking on a new form here.
Well, that's when you go there and just lay on the hydro massage for about a half hour.
Give yourself the treatment. Hydro
Why
massage,
not? Treat
sauna,
yourself.
hot tub.
Treat yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Might as
Relax.
well. Yeah.
But I mean, as much as we're joking about it now, it's like, hey, like sometimes really setting aside the time to actually reward yourself and acknowledge and treat yourself like, hey, it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of time, energy, and hurdles that I've had to overcome. I've like the amount of like battles that have happened in my own head, like nobody else knows about. And how do I really show up and take care of me now, knowing that I'm still here today, having overcome all of that I had to go through internally, that other people might not even have a privy of information about.
Well, and I mean, I had a gentleman reach out to me, probably September, August. I don't even remember. He's like, Mark, he's like, I don't have a mental health diagnosis. He goes, I'm not dealing with an alcohol addiction. He goes, but I got diabetes and my blood sugar's out of control. He's like, can I join your group text? He's like, I know I'm different than everybody else. I'm like, dude, of course you can. I mean, this isn't just about recovery or drugs or alcohol. Anybody wants to better their life. I mean, if you want to better your life by getting your diabetes in check, that's fine. This dude has been the most accountable, the most disciplined in our group, probably since like I said, August or September when he approached me. I mean, New Year's Day, he's checking in, taking a picture. I'm at Planet Fitness or what have you. He showed a picture before he started working out, and then he did a before and after on New Year's Day. The guy's lost like 45 pounds and maybe even a little more of that in like 90 days, hitting the gym every single day. But more importantly, his A1C on the blood sugar has come down so much that the doctor is literally asking, what are you doing on a daily basis? Like, he got his diet under control, but exercise was a major component. But see, it's the same thing with him like it is with me. I find it a lot easier to be more disciplined with my diet if I'm putting the time in the gym. If I'm getting up at 4:30, I'm putting all that time in every single day. I'm going to be very cognizant of what I put in my body, because why am I wasting my time doing all that? I could be sleeping in the morning, right? And it's the opposite effect. I mean, if I go through a little stretch, like let's say Thanksgiving weekend, take the 4 days off for Thanksgiving weekend, treat myself. I noticed by the end of those 4 days, I'm not as disciplined with my diet. Because I'm not getting up in the morning. Whatever. I mean, I'm going to hit the gym on Monday, which that was the mindset I had. Oh, I'll hit the gym next week. Next week comes, I'll hit the gym next week. In the meantime, I'm drinking, doing pills, going to McDonald's and everything else, getting fat and strung out. I mean, it was terrible. It was a terrible way to live. But that's the life that I lived for, a decent amount of time before I got myself straight.
Right, and that's the thing where it's like, hey, that's a hard thing I got to do. That's a problem for like future Justin or tomorrow. Just like, this is not a now problem. And I think that's where we just, like you said, you compound it. It makes it more hard. Like, this is the thing that I know I need to have showing up in my world. And I know I'll feel much better when I make it here and I have it present versus just, I pay it lip service. It sounds nice. It's what other people want to hear me saying. The whole time I know I'm lying. They know I'm lying. And no, it's not doing anybody any service. And so that's where it's all about, hey, your actions that you're taking. Like you kind of really highlight, right? Like,
I'm laughing because it's no different than talking to somebody around Halloween and like, yeah, I'm going to quit drinking New Year's Day, New Year's resolution. Okay. Well, I mean, your spouse is ready to file for divorce. Your relationship with your kids are strained. How about we start not drinking now? Why do we got to wait to New Year's Day? It's the same mindset with the exercise too,
Yeah.
It's just it's the way your mind works, the way your brain. If you let your brain or mind control you, it'll take you for a walk that you don't necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
You got to slow down those thoughts. You really got to do a lot of reframing, and you got to create discipline. But that being said, it's like the people that look at the glass half full versus half empty. And it's just like we talked about earlier, 22 days for a habit, 100 days for a lifestyle. You shift that focus in your brain enough times, enough days in a row, your brain will automatically go to the glass half full.
Yeah.
Your brain will automatically go to there's no better time than now. You just have to train it with that self-talk, with positive thoughts, positive affirmations. Your brain is so powerful, yet it's an organ that we know the least about. I mean, we know the least about that organ than any other organ in our body.
Yeah, as you're talking, I think a big part of that, you're talking we want to avoid that. I think a part of this is also like, hey, let me be honest with my expectations of myself. Like, how am I going to respond when all of a sudden now I'm doing things completely different than I was doing before? My body physically wasn't moving like this before. And now I'm taking to the gym multiple days a week. I know after that first time, if I go too hard, I'm going to say, screw this. This is not a good time. This is supposed to be better for me. I feel awful. And so knowing that, hey, I need to make myself aware that this is not going to be a cakewalk, that this is not going to go smooth. So when that thought pops up and when stress kicks in, because stress is naturally going to show up, it's what happens like in our survival mechanism whenever anything is different than, status quo. Hello, stress, because this is different and this might make me uncomfortable. So how do I not just flee this scene and not have this be present in my life? How do I actually attend to this? How do I actually attend to myself so that I can show up and attend to the things that I need to in my life, knowing that I'm going to feel a heck of a lot better about the person that I am, being aware that I'm showing up for myself in a way that shows like I care about the outcome of this story here.
Yeah,
I want to see this be successful.
One thing I want to emphasize too, we're talking about the gym and all this stuff. We're talking about getting the body moving. I don't want everybody to think out there that I'm pushing them to go to the gym and lift weights every day. We're just talking about getting the body moving. Okay. Exercising, whatever you want to call it, get your body more active than it was before. So, I mean, it could be something as simple as if you work on a third floor in an office building, instead of taking the elevator, walk the 3 flights of stairs in the morning, in the afternoon, and then maybe on your way to and from lunch. Something as simple as that. Download a pedometer on your phone. I think most smartphones got the steps app. Take a look at how many steps you're doing. Okay, well, I'm averaging only 2,200 steps a day because I got an office job. Let me get to 5,000. Do what you got to do to get to 5,000. Well, it's cold outside. Well, yeah, I understand it's cold outside. What can I do? Well, do you like shopping? Yeah, I like shopping. Well, go walk around the friggin' mall. Most of these malls, you can bring your dog. Take your dog around the walk in the mall. You don't have to go in the shop.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of walkers in the mall during the wintertime. I mean, there's ways around it. But just get your body moving. I don't want everybody to think, oh, we're pushing, CrossFit or weightlifting or bodybuilding. No, it just morphed and kind of went down that path for me. There was no intention. The intention was just to get better, to get sober, and live a life of recovery. It just evolved into this, and it evolved into this by accident, honestly.
Well, and it's something that was much needed at the time when you needed to show up. And I mean, you talk about that focus and that commitment and that discipline. Like, and you're right, like physical activity can be whatever it is for anybody. I know people that go play in these ultimate frisbee leagues or 35 and over basketball leagues, like ways to kind of help yourself stay connected to something physical into your body. Because I mean, when it gets like really hard to get moving and you might not feel like that's the thing you want to do and you've been sitting in your house for days, you're just like, your body feels it. It starts to feel sore. Just like when you oversleep, it's like, oh, what am I doing? It's our body's way of saying like, this isn't working for me. And I need to pay attention when it sends me that signal.
And it's never changed. What's the best exercise that we can give ourselves? Walking. That's it. Walking is the best exercise. And people of all ages can walk for the most part. And if you're fortunate enough to get to 10,000 steps per day, that's the magic number. You will see your body physically change with 10,000 steps per day.
All right.
For sure.
So I think you just gave me a goal and all our listeners a goal for the day. So
work your way up to it, though. It doesn't start that way, but if you can work your way up and stay there at that plateau, 10,000 steps per day. Easier said than done, especially during the wintertime, but think out of the box. If that's all that you do, you're on your way.
Yeah.
That's all that I did early on until my buddy started picking me up, was walking
Mm-hmm.
around the block,
You find what
through the
works for you.
neighborhood. Then maybe I'll go to the lake, walk around the lake, download that app. But the app was already on the phone. I just didn't realize it because I never checked it before. Well, that's all I'm getting as far as steps. Maybe I'll try to get to 5,000 a day. Okay, well, I got the 5,000 for the last week. Maybe I'll try to get to 7,500 the next week. Just build up.
Right.
Because walking will get your endorphins up as well.
You're like, hey, like you're treating your body like you care about what goes into it, what happens to it, and how you're using it. And so it's like, I'm going to get to the point where it's like, I don't want to put these things in my body anymore because it's just tearing down everything I've been working on. And then what is that saying to me in this commitment that I've made to myself? Am I backing out of this now? And so I think that goes a long way in just helping sustain recovery, as well as, helping sustain like a good, like emotional mindset. Because this was a big thing, like me and one of my friends like talked about early on. And he's just like, I got multiple gym memberships. I'm like, what do you have multiple for? Are you just a collector? He's like, no, like you just never know. And so he's like, I got 24-hour fitness. I got the one that I've always gone to that we go to. And I got one that's got like locations all around the country. So if I'm out of town and I need a spot to go to, I always have somewhere to go if something hits me at 2 a.m. in the morning and I just need to get out.
That's what I have. That's the membership I have. Honestly, it is. I actually have a membership where I got a fob. It's open 24/7, 365. I can go anytime I want. That's what I wanted. I remember the very first Thanksgiving I was sober. That was probably the hardest holiday I had to go through. Remember, I couldn't sleep that night. And I remember in the middle of the night, driving to the gym, using that fob, and working out, I guess, very early on Thanksgiving morning, that particular day, just to get my mind on, mind straight, right. Because it was my first Thanksgiving sober, but it was also my first Thanksgiving sober without seeing my children, and that was kind of hard for me to deal with. But that was very methodical in choosing that particular gym and that type of membership. I wanted access to a gym at any time because you never know when those thoughts are going to creep in.
Right. It's like, hey, when that emotional pain shows up, you know what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to it. And that's kind of being proactive to set yourself to manage it well. And I think that's when we're talking about this tonight. I mean, regarding like that mind and body, just the connection there, because these two go hand in hand. I mean, really, I think you've done a fantastic job really highlighting just like how our beliefs, our attitudes, our thoughts, our feelings have a huge impact on our physical well-being and our overall health tonight. And so, Mark, before we kind of call it an evening, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience tonight?
I mean, as I said before, it's one day at a time. There's no better time than now. Control the controllables. Do what you can do. Again, I don't want to give the thought process that you got to be a bodybuilder or you got to do CrossFit. Just get the body moving. Little changes will give you we'll see results. And sometimes when you start seeing those results, you want to make more changes because you like the results that you're seeing.
Right.
That's what happened to me. And it's kind of like riding the wave, if you will. But you're doing things in a healthier manner, as opposed to a destructive manner like I've lived. And it's just a much better way of living, is what I would say.
Love it. That's fantastic, Mark. And Mark, thank you for sharing tonight and sharing your personal experience. And so I think overall did a fantastic job kind of really highlighting like how these two go hand in hand together. And so I just want to thank everybody for being here and listening to the podcast, talk about the mind and body connection. And go ahead and join us on our next podcast here when Mark and I dive into some other interesting topics. So until we catch you next time on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, I am Justin Wolf, joined by Mark Regala, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of Nami DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.